At some point in your life you have felt it, that specific pull toward another person that does not follow logic, does not respond well to reason, and arrives without asking permission. Your heart rate changes, your attention narrows, the rest of the world goes slightly out of focus, and you find yourself doing things you would not have predicted, saying things you might not otherwise say, reorganizing your entire life around another person's schedule. The real answer to what ancient humans did when they fell in love is far stranger and far more familiar than you might expect. For a long time, romantic love was treated as a cultural invention, something that emerged from literature, from courtly tradition, from the particular social conditions of specific times and places. The ancient Greek concept of eros, the medieval idea of courtly love, the romantic movement of the 19th century, each was seen as a distinct cultural construction rather than a universal human experience. Then the anthropologists started comparing notes. Researcher Helen Fisher at the Rutgers University Brain Imaging Center spent decades studying love across cultures and found something that challenged the assumption of cultural construction entirely. Fisher identified evidence of romantic love, characterized by the specific cluster of behaviors including focused attention on one individual, intrusive thinking about that person, craving for emotional union, and a willingness to sacrifice for that person, in 147 of 166 cultures examined. The remaining cultures showed no absence of love. They showed an absence of the anthropological record needed to identify it. Romantic love, Fisher concluded, is not a cultural invention. It is a biological drive, as old as hunger, as universal as sleep. But what did it actually look like in the deep past, before poetry, before marriage ceremonies, before the social structures that now contain and channel romantic feeling? Start with what the body does. When ancient humans fell in love, their brains were doing exactly what yours does now. The same neurochemical cascade. Elevated dopamine creating the specific motivational focus that makes one person feel like the only important thing in the world. Norepinephrine generating the alertness, the racing heart, the inability to sleep. Reduced serotonin producing the intrusive, obsessive quality of early romantic love that researchers have shown is neurologically similar to the thought patterns of obsessive-compulsive disorder. This was not a choice. It was a biological event, and it happened in ancient human brains in exactly the same way, because those brains were structurally identical to yours. Archaeological and anthropological evidence gives us clues about how this biological event expressed itself in ancient social contexts. Among hunter-gatherer societies studied by anthropologists, romantic love typically expressed itself through several consistent behaviors. Increased proximity seeking, gift-giving of food, materials, or objects of personal significance, displays of skill or status, protection behaviors, and something that anthropologists have documented across dozens of hunter-gatherer societies, a period of mutual, exclusive focus that looks almost identical to what modern people call the honeymoon phase. Researcher David Bunk at the University of Groningen studied jealousy and mate-guarding behaviors across cultures and found that protective jealousy, the desire to maintain exclusive access to a romantic partner, appears in every culture ever examined. This is not a modern neurosis. It is an ancient biological mechanism that appears to have evolved alongside pair bonding itself. But love in the ancient world carried stakes that most modern people do not face. In small hunter-gatherer groups of 20 to 50 people, a romantic bond was not just an emotional event. It was a political one. The pairing of two people altered the resource-sharing dynamics of the entire group. It created new alliances and disrupted old ones. It changed who hunted with whom, who shared food with whom, who would be protected and by whom if the group faced danger. Ancient humans falling in love were not just feeling something. They were reshaping their social world. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer HRDY at the University of California, Davis, whose work on human cooperative breeding and social evolution spans several decades, has argued that the emotional intensity of pair bonding in humans evolved specifically because the stakes were so high. In a world where survival depended on cooperation, a bond strong enough to override individual self-interest and motivate real sacrifice was enormously valuable. The neurological machinery that makes love feel overwhelming, that makes one person seem irreplaceable, that makes the prospect of loss feel like a physical threat, evolved because those feelings produced behaviors that kept people bonded through difficulty. Love hurt in the ancient world partly because it was designed to. There is another dimension to this that connects ancient love to something you feel right now. Research on the physiological effects of pair bonding, particularly the role of the hormone oxytocin, has shown that the act of physical touch, eye contact, and shared emotional experience between bonded individuals produces measurable changes in stress response, pain tolerance, immune function, and even cognitive performance. Being in love with someone and being physically close to them does not just feel good. It changes your body at a measurable level. Ancient humans did not know any of this, but they felt it. The specific calm that comes from being physically close to a bonded partner, the specific agitation of separation, the physical manifestation of emotional distress when a bond is threatened, these experiences were as real and as immediate for them as they are for you. In rock art and carved objects from ancient sites across Africa, Europe, and Asia, researchers have found recurring depictions that appear to show paired figures, sometimes touching, sometimes facing each other in postures that later traditions would recognize as intimate, sometimes buried together, their bodies arranged to suggest an embrace. The interpretation of these images is always contested among archaeologists, because images cannot speak. But the patterns are consistent enough, across sites separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, that many researchers take them as evidence that the human impulse to mark and memorialize romantic bonds is very old indeed. Consider what it meant to an ancient human to choose a specific person. In a world without the elaborate social and legal structures that modern people use to navigate romantic commitment, the choice of a partner was an act that rested entirely on internal experience and social negotiation. There was no contract to sign. There was feeling, and there was the judgment of the group. There was the pull of biology and the constraint of community. There was the ancient conversation between what the heart demanded and what survival required. That conversation has never ended. You are having it right now in a more complicated social context with more elaborate tools for navigating it, but with the same underlying biology, the same neurochemical cascade, the same pull toward one specific person that overrides reason and reorganizes everything else around it. Ancient humans fell in love the way you do, with the same loss of focus on anything else. The same strange courage it produces, the same fear of loss, the same willingness to do things that would not otherwise make sense. The only thing that has changed is the world they had to navigate those feelings in. The feelings themselves have not changed at all. They could not. They are too old. They are too deep. And they work.